it's a delight to be able to say that Titfield Thunderbolt has been restored in 4K and was re-released a couple of weeks ago. So how does a project like this kick off? What is the first thing that you and the team have to do?
So once we get the green light for a restoration, by that point, I would have researched the materials. And by that, what I mean is you have to find the original camera negative, which is what you're going to restore the film from. So I will research where the camera negative is placed. We have a massive storage facility just not far from Heathrow Airport.
Oh, yeah.
And we pay them to store all of our videotapes and film reels. Another place where a lot of our films are stored is at the BFI.
Oh, yep.
So I check where the film is stored. I believe this one was in our own storage. I get it sent to our restoration company. On this film, it was Silver Salt Restoration, based in West London. I get that over to them. Once we have the green light, I can then raise a purchase order, and where all systems go on the restoration. So
crikey, yeah. So I'm imagining you going through this kind of like Indiana Jones style warehouse, kind of like varying sort of crates of sort of film sort of piled up on all sides. I imagine it's not necessarily that. It's probably not that far off the truth, actually. I've been to some archives like that. Yeah, it's always quite impressive.
Yeah, they're massive rooms with tall shelves of just reels everywhere. It's quite impressive.
So, what's the eligibility criteria? Like, how do you to what extent do you see some of those choices made about what film? Like, do you get pitches from others? Like, is it that sometimes you think actually that film has been talked about a lot? Maybe we should take the opportunity to actually re-release. What are some of the ideas behind what films get prioritized for restoration?
It's a very good question. I think there are lots of different reasons. So I think in our catalog, Studio Canal has I believe the third biggest catalog of films in the world. And we do have some obvious films that we know are going to get restored, the Terminator 2s, etc. Don't Look Now. The Lady Killers, another classic Ealing Studios film. So with those films, it's a case of, for example, with The Lady Killers, I think the last restoration was 2009, which doesn't seem that long ago, but technology-wise,
I was going to say 2009. Era. Like you're still 2009, possibly still like 720p era. It's 1080. Okay, so it's HD. So you are into the HD era, but it's
you're in HD. But as I explained further on, the technology just wasn't up to today's level, so it's worthy of doing another restoration. Another reason is we'll do lots of deals around the world. So we might sub-license a film to an American company or to a company in another country. So then that will trigger off a restoration.
Yep.
We in the UK have a catalog team that curates kind of what they want to do. They look at anniversaries. They look at kind of, what's coming back in fashion. If there's a famous actor and we're approaching a huge anniversary, or if it's the 30th anniversary of a great film.
Yes.
We'll get ready for that because it's always quite a big celebration of the film. Things like that. And I know some projects can also be passion projects. I think this is also a bit of a cheeky little passion project for some of the colleagues in the UK office. They really wanted this to be done.
Oh, that is nice. Yeah. Oh, that's good. It's nice. That's a nice little tidbit actually, because it's the sort of film that it's a film about passion projects. So it's kind of nice that it's got that actually there is a love being poured into it from the Studio Canal team. I suppose for people not watching, Studio Canal in the UK has kind of absorbed like a sizable chunk of the UK's studio output since movies started being made, right, through acquisitions and mergers, right? So, Ealing Studios being a classic example, but quite a few of the other UK studios have ended up being part of Studio Canal as a group, right? So, So
we've been kind of collating libraries over the previous many years and decades. So we've got some of Alfred Hitchcock's early silent films.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
We've got the Ealing Studio films. We've got the Coralco library, which is like Rambo.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Those films in the 80s. Yeah. Total Recall. So
it's a pretty tasty little collection of films. So, what was the condition of the material? You said that you had to, you do the research, you collect it from archive. What was the condition of the Titfield material specifically?
It wasn't too bad, especially given for its age. I know it was quite dirty and stuff, but there wasn't anything. I don't think there was any deep scratches physically on the film. That can always be a concern.
Okay, yeah. So does that mean, I suppose we'll talk about the technical process momentarily. I suppose the important question before we talk about that technical process, and I start getting really excited because I love the world of film and cinema and particularly all these sorts of processes, but had you seen or were you aware of Titfield Thunderbolt before you took on this project?
I was not, I have to admit. And I am a fan of Ealing Studios, but I did not know this film.
Because people often associate it, lots of people remember this fondly, but actually in the wider cinema world, this wasn't one of the big Ealing Studio hitters. It wasn't actually one of them. It wasn't a Lady Killers. It didn't reach those heady heights of kind of national and indeed international recognition. So yeah, it is a sort of, if you like, a more localized passion piece in terms of its original success as well. Although it's been retrospectively sort of upgraded, I think, by critics a little. But at the time, it wasn't necessarily received in quite the same grand way.
No,
right? We must. Right. Yeah. So once we found the original film, once you've got those boxes of, those canisters of film or boxes of canisters, what does that process from that point look like? What do you actually have to do?
Okay, so it begins with a very physical, analog, mechanical process. So you get the film reels and you check them on a bench. So this goes on a bench with a light box underneath, and you can inspect the film, because the first two processes of a restoration are very physical. You put the film on a physical cleaning machine where it goes through, the reel goes through, and then it's eventually going to go on the scanning machine, which is a crucial part. So you first check the film on a bench, and films have perfs on the side, which are the little holes.
Yes.
And that's the mechanism to move film around through cameras and machines. So you make sure there's no very badly damaged perfs, because if a perf is damaged, the film could come off and start ripping, for example.
Which is a disaster. Yeah. So you want to make sure
that complete disaster.
So you want to make sure that those are, I suppose, repaired so that it runs through. So if there's like a ripped out perforation, I'm sure everyone here has held 35mm film. I'm trying to think. I know I've got some up on a shelf behind me up there. I'm going to bring it down, but I'm sure even the Gen Z who are watching this, you're all familiar with 35mm film, for example, where it's got those dots down, the holes down the side, and those are what help ensure you get a consistent speed and that it runs through. I suppose you can physically repair those, right? So you can you can physically repair them to make sure that it runs through smoothly.
You can repair them, and then also bigger film reels are made up of smaller reels that were assembled together. And when you assemble reels together, you put a joint in them. And some people can use cement, some people can use glue. So you make sure those joints are good as well. Because if the joints are broken, that could tear off. If the joints are a bit lifted off the surface, when it runs through the machine, there'll be a bit of a wobble. Yeah, exactly. So after that, it then goes on a cleaning machine, which takes about one reel of film, say 2,000 feet, which equates to 22 minutes of actual footage, would go on a cleaning machine for about 25 minutes. So it goes through, you put it in this machine, shut the doors on it. It goes through, has all these chemicals kind of flashed onto it. So it gets wet, and it goes through this insane dryer right at the end of the machine that completely dries it. It's like the equivalent of a Dyson Hoover or something.
Oh, wow.
But it literally goes through that and dries it off. So then the film's had a physical clean to get any surface issues off it. After that, we then have a very crucial part of the workflow, which is the scanning. So this is where technology has really improved. So a film scanning has really come a long way. So it goes on another machine, the reel goes there, and it goes through, and it's basically like the reverse of a camera. You have a lens and light, and it's basically taking a still of each frame. So each frame on a reel becomes one digital file.
Yeah.
And so you scan it in 4K resolution, 16-bit color. And when you scan film, what you do is you create something called a log scan. So in the video and film world, log is, if you look at a log image, it would be the image you're looking at, but more milky. There'd be no contrast. And what that does is, with a log scan, is it collects all the information in the image, the entire dynamic range, which means you have more to play about when you do the color grade.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not just that you're basically holding a digital camera over it and taking a snap. It's like HDR almost. You've got a whole range, and it's held in in almost like it's like a huge range of JPEGs compressed into a single file, a single file format, and each of those JPEGs is a whole range of exposures, right? And so you've got
brightness to darkest,
all that color information that you're not losing. Out of curiosity, the reel for this, so this was a Technicolor film, right?
I was about to touch upon that.
Oh, that's okay. Technicolor. Okay, yeah, nice one. So, but what size film what is the original size film that this runs through then? It says recorded
it's 35 mil.
It is 35 mil, okay.
It's 35 mil,
in which case, I won't interrupt your flow. So it's been through, so it sounds like at roundabout the running speed. It goes almost like running speed through the cleaning machine. So,
through the cleaning machine is running speed. The scanner is much slower.
Okay, yeah.
Especially if the film is in very bad physical condition, because you want to run it slowly so you get a good stable image.
Yep.
So then once it's been scanned, it goes into restoration, which is where you have it now digitally as all these files, and you run it through software. So you can do an automated pass. We have really good restoration softwares that you can do a soft automation pass, because when you scan a film and you start looking at it, the big issues that you have is immediately you have dirt on the image. Yeah. You'll have something we call sparkle, which is just the white flecks of dust and dirt that just keep coming up. You can have scratches, you can have warping, you can have chemical stains.
Yeah, those sort of anyone who's seen a film where you get the kind of the burning or melting effects. Well, those can happen just through exposure to a little bit of UV or even just age, right? So all those little things, those imperfections need to be, if not treated with your automated system, then at least flagged to then be treated mechanically, right?
Yeah. So then after the automated system, it will go through a manual process where someone will literally go through every single frame and clean up everything thoroughly. In this process, the guys who work at Silversalt can really put in a lot of effort, because if you have a really bad scratch on an image, they'll kind of use previous frames and after frames of the shot to recreate where that scratch has torn apart the image.
Yeah, it's not just a case of getting the Photoshop clone tool on the same, because we'll touch on some of those sort of questions later. But actually, it's actually about being true to what was being filmed, and by taking the frame before, the frame after, you can true to the original idea of the film, you can replace those things like scratches, which is easy for like Sky or for fairly standard, but I suppose that starts getting a little more challenging when you come to things like faces or moving objects. That becomes more challenging.
Yeah, if it's a grey sky, it's like, okay, this is quite straightforward. If it's like blank wallpaper in a living room, but the minute you touch people's faces or some kind of pattern, it becomes an issue. So we touched upon that this was a Technicolor 3-strip film. So in the history of cinema, Technicolor invented 3-strip, which was their camera system where basically onto pieces of black and white film, they exposed the film on 3 pieces of film, one covered red, green, and blue. And so then in the printing process, they would then go and create the YCM, which is yellow, cyan, magenta. In the film and video world, that's kind of the color wheel, red, green, blue, yellow, cyan, magenta. What that then means with Titfield is you have to scan 3 pieces of film to make up one image. So instead of a normal film is traditionally 6 to 10 reels, Titfield was, I can't remember the full count, but it's 6 to 10 reels times 3.
Yeah, okay.
So,
and the benefit of that was color information, right? You got a really Technicolor gave a really lovely, rich color, really
vivid
beautiful.
And rich. It was lovely. Yeah, absolutely amazing, that era of filmmaking. When once you scanned these 3 pieces of film for each reel in the digital software, our buddies at Silversalt then have to align the image. So you've got this kind of yellow, cyan, magenta, and you have to make sure they align, because if they don't, and you can see this if you watch old films sometimes on television that haven't been restored, you can sometimes see a greenish or even blue line on the outlines of characters or on the outline of items, and that's where that film was 3-strip and it's not been aligned very well.
Yeah.
So you have to pick points on the image and make sure everything aligns like perfectly. There's a lot of geometry involved actually on the computer.
Yep. To what extent is, through this process, I'm imagining that if the software is reasonably up to date, actually it will be employing some of these fairly new machine learning tools. For example, in sort of alignment, I know that some of those tools are working their way into the restoration world, as they have already been in some of the other kind of optical and digital effects world. I'm not going to say the words AI because it's a little rudimentary as a description, but actually some of these sort of machine learning and some of these sort of edge detection tools are becoming pretty effective, quite hands-off effective actually at picking up some of these things.
I think with this one, we still had a manual process, but I think those tools are eventually going to take over, and all it will need is just a human eye to make sure everything
to validate,
make
sure you've got the human in the loop.
But there is a lot of good automated processes in restoration software, which come in handy.
And it helps because you want to spend all that human time in those faces or those challenging things where the computer's just never going to do the right thing. So at this point, so you've scanned, you've aligned the 3 separate Technicolor films. What's next? What do you do then?
So now you have a restored image. It's all aligned. Now you have to do the color grade.
Okay, yeah.
So now this is where things get interesting and creative. So unfortunately, a lot of films that we restore are from an era where a lot of the filmmakers have passed away, sadly. So we always like to involve filmmakers where we can. So with the color grade, we'll always send our restoration company a reference file of what the film should be, which should be our previous release. That's just so you can check editorially you've got the full film and this scene cuts to this scene and everything's all there. We'll then also send a check print, a release print of the film. So this is what would have been projected in cinemas.
Yep.
We'll send that to the lab. They can scan it, and then we can use that as a color reference.
Okay, yep.
And so with the color grading, we're not trying to do anything differently. We're trying to match exactly how the film would have looked. If there's an issue where perhaps the last master is from a long time ago and it's quite faded and doesn't look good, we'll do some research on the cinematographer and the director. We'll look at recent films that they also filmed around that film and go, this is how
this is where it gets really fascinating. Yeah, because you're essentially, I mean, with a historic film like this, I suppose you're also, as there'll be research into knowing what the intention would have been with certain colors, what the vividness was expected of a film at that time, and as you say, for the individuals involved, the director of photography, what were they doing? What was their intent with lighting? It gets exciting. I love that stuff because people do not, people who watch films casually perhaps don't realize the level of effort that goes into lighting, into color grading, and back then it would have been all this expensive bulbs and all this kit, but all that makes a huge difference to the way the color looks, and therefore that's part of the storytelling. Particularly in Titfield, where you have this, the original train that they run is sort of a beloved but rather tired-looking black thing, and then you have this beautifully colorful, ancient locomotive that's the hero of the piece at the end. The color is such an important part of that storytelling. So it's really interesting to hear the work that you put in to bring that back to our screens again.
Yeah, they wanted that train to pop off screen. They wanted to, look great in all its Technicolor glory. So that's what you have to do in the color grade. And then once the color grade is finished, you basically make the master files that will be shown in different places, because how you show the film in cinema is different to how you show it on a Blu-ray, to how you show it on HDR. So we'll make basically 4 major deliverables, which is the DCP, which is the digital cinema package, which is what plays in cinema. You'll make the standard HD file, which is what you see on TV and what you make a Blu-ray and a DVD from. And then we'll make our 4K HDR Dolby Vision Master, which is kind of the brightest, biggest way that you can see the film. And then we'll make a physical disc of that, the UHD, the 4K UHD.
Yeah, which I'm delighted to be. Yeah, I've got the copy here.
Lovely.
I've got the. So I've included 2 images that we've been talking. It's the 2 images. So it is within your package. You very kindly sent through some of the frames before restoration. Some of those are how it originally looked, and so I took 2 reasonably close frames to sort of compare. Firstly, the fidelity. You can see there's a difference in fidelity between the 2, but also in the vividness of the color. There's a little bit of a fade in the original there, and you can see the restoration really brings out those colors back to how they would have looked if you'd watched this in the cinema in the 1950s. It's a really beautiful comparison, I think, to kind of show what the result is. Which kind of brings us to the next point, because you've created those files, but you talked about color and the work that goes into restoration of color and bringing back those original colors. But there's also much more to it than just the color. You talk about where there are scratches or if there's damage that requires restoration, essentially recreation. Where does that line sit between the restoration of an existing work or the creation of something new and potentially distinct from the original artist's vision? How do you establish that line? What does that kind of journey look like from your side?
I think you have to be very careful. And I think, as my boss at Studio Canal puts it, he likes to say that we are custodians of these films. And eventually, we'll pass it on to whoever replaces us. And you have to, as a custodian, you have to take care of this film. And you have to be true to the original vision. And what you think looks good or doesn't look good is completely irrelevant. So for us, we try not to meddle with anything. You know, I know in some places and other parts of the industry with restoration, some people try to manage the film grain, which is a complete no-no for us.
Interesting.
Yeah, because people get scared that people aren't used to seeing that much film grain anymore. They're used to cleaner, modern images, and it's like, no, this is how it's meant to look.
Yep. That's like taking the vinyl click sounds out of a vinyl. Yes. It's like no, that's part of the music. That sound is part of the decision making process. Yeah, absolutely. Same with film grain.
So, yeah, we don't try to create anything new. We very, very rarely ever meddle with anything. In fact, in my time, I've project managed over 100 restorations. Oh, wow. We had one example, sadly not on this film, but on Lady Killers. We had, in Lady Killers, you remember when the bird gets set free from the cage?
Yes.
And the bird is flying around the house, and then the lads are bumbling around trying to grab the bird. And
another train movie, by the way. It's a highly rated train. I count Lady Killers as a train movie because the railway is such an integral character in that film, even if it doesn't get in lines.
Yeah, it's all set around King's Cross. It's all like filmed around the corner from the Great Station.
Yeah. So the bird's flying around. Yeah,
the bird's flying around, and it's on strings, obviously, in the film studio. So I'm watching the film, doing a quality control check, making sure there's no issue with the image. And I'm like, oh my god, the guys, they left a scratch in. This is shocking. And I'm going back and forth, and then it hit me. I was like, this is the string, and the light from the studio keeps hitting the string. And unfortunately, because we have such a pristine, fancy, nice 4K restoration, it looked like scratches. So
it's I see what you mean. So you actually have to take a decision. Obviously, you want to keep the strings in, but the perception of the audience will be they will be distracted. They'll be pulled out of that movie thinking they've seen a scratch. Yeah, that's a really interesting example.
So I emailed the whole catalog team. We had a really great debate about it. I was like, I don't really want to do this, but it will to the average viewer, it will look like an imperfection, a problem. It will distract them.
Yep.
And we just came to a decision. We're like, we're not changing the film. We're not doing anything drastic. We'll remove the strings. We'll do a bit of effects work on the image. So that was one time. And then when we work with filmmakers, we've had them make changes to their film, which
interesting. The old George Lucas moment. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think actually we did Flash Gordon back in 2020. Ironically, involved more strings. It's in that because they're the end. And the director wanted the strings to be removed, so we did that. So we've got a bit of a theme with strings. I remember on Don't Look Now from 1970s, Tony Richmond was a cinematographer, and there were some shots in the film where he was like, yeah, no, I didn't expose this the way I wanted, and let's do it. Let's up the brightness here, lower the contrast here. And I sat back, I was like, it's your film.
But there is, I suppose, to kind of summarize that, there is no easy answer. There is no easy answer of, there's the line, happy days, there's the line, that's restoration, that's creating something. There is no neat line, and it sounds like there's always an ongoing narrative, an ongoing story about what that looks like, and it changes, not just from film to film, but potentially from scene to scene, depending on what's actually happening there. Jahanzeb, that has just been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Really, it's a lot of love has been poured into this restoration, and I hope people who are watching it will really enjoy it. Thanks so much for your time.
Me too. Thank you so much.